This is the Fighting Irish Faithful podcast, Catholics versus Cowboys, Part 2. Tonight, we discuss the details, the stats, the numbers of Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State in their Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame has a big opportunity, but there is a big opponent in front of them. We're going to break down offense. We're going to break down defense. We're going to go through what is in front of Notre Dame, what obstacles they must overcome, what are the challenges, and can Notre Dame be victorious and triumph over the Cowboys? Here we go. Strap yourselves in. Christmas is coming, but don't get fat just yet. Sit back, relax, pour yourself a drink. Let's go, Irish.
Three wide receivers right. They're going to go for two. Back to throw. Walsh looks. Has the time. Lost the ball. The pass is batted down. It's batted down by Peru.
Dawson throws. Open receiver in the end zone. Touchdown. Notre Dame. Somehow the Irish did it.
Out of the pack. 30, 35. Goodbye, baby. At the 50, the 40, the 30, the 20, the 10. Bye-bye. Rocket touchdown. Irish.
Zibikowski looking for a block. Touch to the right to the 40. Gets a block. Gets to the 45, 50. Up to the 45, 40, 30. One man to beat. 20, 15, 10. He's down to the 5. Touchdown, Irish.
What's going on? Fighting Irish Faithful, as promised. Catholics versus Cowboys, Part 2. Let's see how this goes. The fourth week of Advent. This is your last opportunity before Christmas to catch the show. Or actually, quite frankly, you can catch the show anytime because it is on Spotify, it is on iTunes, on YouTube, Anchor, all those places for your podcast. This is the Fighting Irish Faithful Show. We are also on Twitter at faithful_Irish. And tonight we are doing something new. We are doing a Twitter space, as we live record the show. So if you are there trying to make the show a little more interactive, let's do this. So it's also the winter solstice here and the darkest day of the year, and not to be dramatic or too metaphoric or anything, but look, as promised, you come to me for numbers, stats, data on this show, and I've looked at the numbers of Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State, and quite frankly, it could raise some concerns. So we had some dark, heavy metal. It's the winter solstice. It's still darkness before Christmas, right? So I think we need the birth of Jesus to help us out here as we move closer to Christmas, to the new year, for the new Marcus Freeman era. But before we begin the show, the meat and potatoes, it's probably too late for you to get some last-minute Christmas gifts online unless you do very, very expensive shipping. But the Fighting Irish Faithful Show has a store on Etsy. There is a coupon code out there for it, for your Fighting Irish Faithful podcast gear, or get yourself a Catholics versus Cowboys shirt. Get it now. Use the coupon Fiesta Bowl 15, Fiesta Bowl 15, all one word, and that'll get you 15% off. If you order within the next 2 days, you should get it before the new year. So take care, do that, and thank you for your support. So first, the Twitter shout out. On the note of the gear, one of my Twitter followers at ND_Vader, also known as Remember the Six. He has purchased a shirt, so thank you, sir. And he sent me an inquiry about when it was being delivered, if it had been shipped out. It has. So that is the customer service you get. I do track the orders, make sure everything is going, at least progressing to some extent, make sure there's nothing bad. And if you have any problems, by all means, reach out to me. So, okay, enough plugging the store. I'm excited that it's working, and I'm making like $1 a shirt. Anyway, that's okay. It's mostly just for fun. But anyway, since the last show was done on the 13th, it feels like forever since I've been with you all. And we've had early initial signing day on the 15th, last week Wednesday, where players signed national letters of intent the early, not the early enrollees potentially, but Notre Dame signed 21 players, and right now we are a top 10 ranked recruiting class for the next season of 2022. We are ranked 7th in both Rivals and 24/7. So every show I always talk about how Notre Dame's recruiting rankings relative to their opponent. I always usually go to 24/7 just because their site's really easy to use. But it was nice to see that both sites are on pace. So Notre Dame, Fighting Irish Digital Media, I think did a really good job of highlighting Coach Freeman, Coach Reese, and around the country in their Gulfstream or whatever private jet they have. They're playing euchre or poker or whatever they are they got there going. But hey, it's really nice to see that Notre Dame is doing a good job of promoting their coach, promoting the podcast, giving me content, that's for sure. So good job, Notre Dame Fighting Irish Digital Media, for taking care of Coach Freeman and highlighting the players that did sign. Now, I read an excellent article breaking down Notre Dame and how well they did by position. So I'm going to give a little plug here to Blue and Gold Illustrated. They went through all the quarterbacks, gave them a grade. I won't go through everything, but some of the high points. Tight end, no surprise, we got an A-. Offensive line, an A. Linebacker, we got an A with 5-star Jalen Sneed. D-line, we got a B, but Tyson Ford is who he is, and he's great. Notre Dame also got B+ in special teams with the number a really good punter, so that's good. Wide receiver is of concern because Tobias Merriweather is the only real big-time recruit, and of course Notre Dame lost Walker to Michigan and CJ Williams to either USC or UCLA. So Notre Dame out there, other podcasts, other blogs, people are talking about how Notre Dame has a problem right now at recruiting wide receivers. Maybe it's a quarterback thing. Maybe it's just our receivers have been kind of stale ever since Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool left. I don't know. I personally don't think so. So go and read the article at Blue and Gold Illustrated, grading all of the recruits, all 21 players that did sign, where they are and where Notre Dame needs to fill the gaps. But Notre Dame right now is sit 7th in the country, top 10, very good place to be. Now, let's get right into this Notre Dame Oklahoma State game. Mike Gundy is the head coach of Oklahoma State, and he has been there 17 years. And if I compare Mike Gundy to now Marcus Freeman, there is quite a difference. That you got one coach who's been probably in the sunset of his career head coaching at Oklahoma State. Marcus Freeman literally has yet to coach a full game as the head coach. Mike Gundy has a decent record. He's a 68% win percentage guy. He has a 4-year recruiting average of 35.5 versus Notre Dame's 13th. But Oklahoma State has a better strength of schedule than Notre Dame. They are ranked 12th according to Sagarin, Notre Dame 41. So from a real high standpoint, you have these two coaches. One has been there, done that. Gundy has been to multiple New Year's Six, but only won, and that was in the 2011 season. They went to overtime and beat out Stanford. Marcus Freeman has yet to coach, and that is the real one concern I have as a fan of our football team. Look, go back to previous shows. I've given him much praise, but there's still that reservation of experience. How is he going to perform in game? Look, he looks great recruiting. He looks great in practice and all these other interviews and other great things. And that's important. But at the end of the day, as a fan, I care about his performance in game, what kind of decisions he is making in game, and ultimately his record will speak louder than anything else. Now, to compound that issue, I personally have concerns, not so much for Marcus Freeman, but just Notre Dame in general. Last week I talked about last time Notre Dame won a bowl that was worth a crap. And now Marcus Freeman is literally in this position, and he's going to a New Year's Six style bowl, the Fiesta Bowl. So I'm not going to lie, I'm going to be a little uneasy for this game and just be like, oh my gosh, just can we, I don't want to like get through it. That's not what I'm saying. I want to enjoy the moment, but we should feel concerned. There is enough data here to make us concerned, and certainly not underestimate Oklahoma State. I'm not going to give you, the nightmares and, monsters in the closet, talk here to your children, as you put them to bed. No, what I'm saying is Oklahoma State has strengths, and Notre Dame better pay attention to this. And quite frankly, so should the fan base. Do not underestimate this football team. As I looked at the stats I normally break down, I just looked at the top 5 stats. Those top 5s are total touchdowns scored, scoring defense, total defense, scoring offense, and rushing touchdowns for the season. Right now, of those top 5, Oklahoma State is better than Notre Dame in 3 of them. If you go farther down the list and you pay attention to just the defensive stats, out of all 8 defensive stats I look at for every opponent, 7 out of the 8, Oklahoma State is better than Notre Dame. Of those 7, 5 of them, Oklahoma State is better than the national champion average, which is crazy. And then out of all 21 stats that I tend to look at, this is things like rushing yards, rushing allowed, passing yards, sacks allowed, run percentage, things of that nature. Of all 21 stats, 14 out of 21, Oklahoma State right now on average for the season is better than Notre Dame. Just at a very high level, looking at that, we should pay attention. We need to be concerned, okay? It makes you pour your glass and hold it a little tighter in your hand as you read these things. First, what's the worst of the worst, and what is the best at what Oklahoma State does? Well, quite frankly, it's tackles for loss and tackles for loss per game. On average, they average 8.69. They are the number 1 team in the country in tackles per loss per game, whereas Notre Dame is only 51st. Now, if you look at tackles for loss allowed, Notre Dame on average is 92nd in the country. We've been kind of struggling with this all season, but right now, as it is today, 92nd. And then also sacks allowed, Notre Dame is 101st. So Oklahoma State averages more than what Notre Dame allows, which, hey, that's not so bad. Well, no, it's because Oklahoma State is that much better than all the defenses Notre Dame has faced all season. So that is something that we should pay attention to. All right. Sacks allowed against us, it's not good, versus their defense and their best stat on defense, which is tackles for loss per game. Next is, of course, sacks per game. They are also number 1 in the country, 4.15 per game, better than our 3.3 sacks per game. Now, we're still really good, and we're ranked 5th in the country, okay, but they're number 1, all right? So head-to-head, it's not even close. Third down defense. Oklahoma State is 2nd. They only permit their opponent to get a first down on third down 1 out of 4, 25%. Notre Dame, it's 1 out of 3, it's 33%, all right? And we're ranked 19th in the country. Now, our third down conversion is not better than that. We are 62nd in the country, only converging on third down 40% of the time. And actually, Oklahoma State is better than Notre Dame 44% of the time. So there's another one for them. Rushing defense. Okay, this is something that will play into a lot later on in the podcast. Oklahoma State allows their opponents, on average, just 91 rushing yards a game. Notre Dame averages 127. Not bad. It's 31st in the country. But get this. Oklahoma State has allowed only 9 rushing touchdowns all season. Just 9. Now, okay, they're in the Big 12. I don't know how much rushing is going, and I didn't break down all their opponents and how many rushing, touchdowns they've had versus all of the other, people. All right, and most likely as a conference, they're not rushing as much as, say, I don't know, the Sun Belt or something, okay, or even the Big Ten. But rushing defense is clearly in their advantage, and it's better than national champion average. National champion average is 104 rushing yards allowed for your opponent, about 12th in the country, and they're smoking that. And then last but not least, total defense. They are 3rd in the country in total defense, averaging 278 yards, and compare that to Notre Dame, our total defense 339 yards. So look, just those stats alone, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are better than Notre Dame and also better than the national champion average. Go shoot yourself. But keep in mind that they are without their defensive coordinator for this game. So I'm not going to go through all the numbers because that'll just put you all to sleep. But I wanted to talk on those because that's something that we should pay attention to. Now, of even more concern is, okay, look, Notre Dame has gotten better over the last 5 games. And really, you could say after the loss versus Cincinnati, Notre Dame was significantly better and is getting better week by week, blowing out Georgia Tech, despite the fact that their running back just transferred to Alabama. But we held them to, 60 yards and no touchdowns when we played them. But whatever, the media is not going to talk about that. They're just going to, praise Alabama for, oh, look at this great running back, this transfer they're getting from Georgia Tech. Like, what are you talking about? We shut him down completely. But look, Notre Dame's without Kyron Williams for this game. And I would feel significantly better about Notre Dame's odds and chances winning this game. I'm not saying they're going to lose, but I would feel more confident in an Irish victory if Kyron Williams was suited up and would be running the football and doing pass protection for us. And here's why. First, as he departs and opts out, goes to the NFL, right? I looked at some numbers of how he does overall as his career. Let's give him a little bit of praise. He is number 9 all time since 2000. Just people who have played since 2000. So I'm not looking at like Vegas Ferguson and all those guys. Okay, Alan Pinkett, no. But number 9 all time since 2000 with 186 points. Number 9th on that list in points scored. He is ahead of Golden Tate, Will Fuller, and Jeff Samardzija. So there's some guys to kind of the top 3 are kickers, of course. Yoon is number 1. But then for all time rushers, ever since the 40s or the 50s or whatever, he is 13th all time in rushing yards, 2,146 rushing yards, and number 5 with 27 rushing touchdowns scored. He is tied with Mark Edwards and Jerome Bettis on those lists. So this is a guy who has really stamped his name into the Notre Dame history books, and we will miss him. And he could have, added more to his legacy by staying one more game for this Fiesta Bowl. He chose not to. Go back to last week's episode where I give all my feelings about that. It's the whole kitchen sink. But Kyron Williams this season has given Notre Dame 14 rushing touchdowns and 3 receiving touchdowns, and a wealth of experience, leadership, pass protection, etc. He is a leader and a captain, and our team is better with him in uniform on the field. To look at another way, Kyron Williams has also given Notre Dame this season 102 points. Number 1 on the team. He has more points than Dorr. No one has put more points on the scoreboard than Kyron Williams. He has 102 points out of the entire total 415 points for Notre Dame. That's a quarter of all of Notre Dame points. And that guy generating a quarter of the points will not be playing. So to really ground myself in reality, I'm like, okay, Notre Dame right now scoring offense averages 35.3 points per game. If we took away a quarter of his points, what does that give us? All right. It's not good. Okay. It gives us about 26 points on average. Okay. And yes, okay, I'm very generalizing here, but compare that, 75% threshold to Oklahoma State. Their average is 30.6 points per game. And now we don't have Kyron Williams. So just on that, you don't feel very good. So the doom and gloom continues, though, with pass protection, pass blocking. Cone clearly has relied on this. Now, I didn't go back and watch film and, go back and look at other people and, because I don't have DVR, right? I'm already spending enough on cable. Although all you poor people who thought you'd stick it to the cable company and get YouTube, what's the YouTube streaming thing? I only get it because of the stupid ACC network, and then I cancel it right away. But yeah, they're not carrying ESPN anymore or any of the Disney stuff on YouTube TVs. But the doom and gloom will continue because Cone is now more of a more suspect in the pocket now. All right, his steady pass protector is not there. Cam McDaniel's still not there, right? He graduated a long time ago, all right? So after that, where do we go, right? Who else is putting up points other than Kyron Williams? Well, as I mentioned before, Dorr is second on the list all time with 95 points. But let's look at touchdowns. Who has scored the most touchdowns other than Kyron Williams' crazy 17 total? Well, it's Kevin Austin. But he has a fraction of what Kyron has. He has 6 touchdowns. And then Mayer has 5. And then Lindsey is the next receiver with 3. How many of those receiving touchdowns was Kyron Williams doing pass protection? I don't know. Again, I didn't go back and watch every play. But chances are it was at least half of them. So does that mean that Cone gets sacked or he gets hit or he's rushed and he doesn't make the throw? No, I'm not saying that, all right? But clearly Kyron Williams has an effect, all right? Just give him oxygen and good things happen, right? He's out on the field, just his presence and the aura that is Kyron Williams, number 23 in the back, right? Him and Golden Tate, right? Anyone who wears 23, it seems they do well at Notre Dame. At least that's what it feels. Maybe it's because of the Michael Jordan number. I don't know. But Kyron Williams will not be there pass protection for Buckner, for Jack Cone. It won't matter. But does that mean that Notre Dame now needs to rely on their next most productive guys, Kevin Austin, Mayer, etc., to put the ball in the end zone? I really don't know. So the total touchdowns that Notre Dame has scored, right? With Kyron Williams, total touchdowns, we have 27 on the season. We have 53 total, and we're ranked 27th. Without him, and you take away 17 touchdowns, Notre Dame drops to just having 36 total touchdowns on the season, which will put us at 96. That's like what I'm doing here is if Kyron Williams didn't exist, right? This is like George Bailey, It's a Wonderful Life. He just disappears. He never existed. You never were born, Kyron Williams. You weren't on the football team. We probably wouldn't be 11-1, okay? But without him, we would be 96th in total touchdowns versus Oklahoma State, ranked 41st with 50 total touchdowns. All right. Now, rushing touchdowns, With Kyron Williams, we've had 23 total rushing touchdowns. Subtract 14, we're less than 10. We're at 9 rushing touchdowns. That's 121st in the country without KW. Oklahoma State has 27 rushing touchdowns, more than Notre Dame with Kyron Williams, ranked 26th. Then receiving touchdowns, Notre Dame right now has 25 on the season. Without Kyron Williams, we drop to 22, down at the 3, and ranked 45th in the country. But Oklahoma State has 19 receiving touchdowns. What does this show? It shows that the advantage Notre Dame has, regardless of Kyron Williams in the backfield or not, the advantage Notre Dame has is literally in passing. It's literally in the passing game. Notre Dame is a better passing team than Oklahoma State. Notre Dame is a better offensive team on average than Oklahoma State. I've scared you straight enough about how great the defense of Oklahoma State is. But their offense, it's not nearly as good as ours. And you compare them to other teams they have played, they do not impress me on offense. Let's look at the top offensive stats. Total touchdowns. Right now, we're ahead of them. Scoring offense, we're ahead of them. Passing touchdowns, we're ahead of them. Total offense, 416 yards to their 401 yards. Okay. Red zone touchdowns. We score 64% of the time. They're 62% of the time. We are edging them out. To look at it another way, I looked at who are the best, quote unquote, best teams Oklahoma State played this season. Texas, okay, they're not very good, but they do have a decent offense. All right. Iowa State, who they lost to. Oklahoma, halfway decent team. And Baylor. And yes, they played Baylor twice, so I'm only going to look at the second time they played where they lost. You compare Oklahoma State to these 4 teams, these 4 games. They don't put up enough points. They've put up no more than 33 points max in these games, these against good teams. All right. And their defense has struggled. So anytime you put them against a team that has played well, a team with a good offense, Oklahoma State suffers. And the perfect example is the Baylor game. They lost to Baylor 16-21. So what does this come down to? Let's turn this around to the positives. Can Notre Dame beat Oklahoma State? Absolutely. Why? Because Oklahoma State is without Jim Knowles, their defensive coordinator. He won't be there. He is really the architect behind the success of Oklahoma State this season, their defense. And the scheme will be there, don't get me wrong, but in-game, game time decision, looking at what the opponent is doing and making an adjustment. I don't know how well Jim Knowles does that, but Oklahoma State will not have him on their sideline, up in the booth, being able to do that for their team. Furthermore, Coach Reese is now free. Brian Kelly is not there. Now, I don't know how much of a leash Reese was on with Kelly, but now that he is totally in control of the offense, there is nothing that holds him back except himself and the development and the abilities of his own players. I really believe that Reese understands his players, understands what Kyron Williams gave them, and now without him, what are the strengths of the other guys? Guys like Logan Diggs, guys like Chris Tyree, Kevin Austin, etc. He has now had time for over a month now. It will be over a month from when Notre Dame last played Stanford, right before Thanksgiving, to the new year here in the Fiesta Bowl. He has had time to work on his offense, perfect his craft, and for multiple weeks come up with a game plan, come up with something new. This takes me back to 2014, the Music City Bowl. We put We take Golson, put him out, put Malik Zaire in there. We do something completely different on offense, and we beat LSU. One of my favorite games as a Notre Dame fan. But if Coach Reese can put out new looks, new formations, and run something new, quite frankly, it will totally throw Oklahoma State off. And I do not know if they have the coaching staff that can make an adjustment for what Reese will throw out there on offense. All right. Now, I'm not going to come on here and say, oh, Notre Dame needs some modern offense, a quote modern offense. I'm still waiting for someone to define what a modern offense is. For me, it's just put points on the board. How you actually do it, I really don't give a shit. Okay, whether it's running or passing. Right now, looking at what we have and the amount of production we've put on, we've heavily relied on Kyron Williams. With him not there, we're going to have to rely on Logan Diggs to hurdle some people, Mayer to truck some people, Austin to just use his blazing speed and his size and go up and catch passes. Lindsey's going to have to use his speed in some way, get these guys in space, and kick ass. All right. But Reese now has to be in the position to do that. Make Oklahoma State scramble and not know what hit them. Here's the best stat, though, Fighting Irish Faithful, of why I think Notre Dame is going to win. Turnover margin. Notre Dame is very good. We're basically tied with national champion average. We are right now on the season +9 on turnover margin, ranked 18th in the country. Very good. Oklahoma State is -9 and ranked 72 in the country, which tells me a couple things. Number one, obviously we have there's a 10 turnover spread there between our two teams. But number one, we're taking care of the football. They are not. Our defense is getting turnovers, and theirs is not. In a close game like this, where you have two teams that are very decently matched, I mean, let's face it, right now we're ranked 5th in the polls, and they're ranked 9th. When you're closely matched like that, something like a turnover at a really shitty time can really change momentum. Go back to the Wisconsin game. We were losing at the start of the 4th quarter, and then Tyree runs the ball back, and then that was just a momentum changer, and then boom, 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 turnover. Notre Dame scores on those. All right. I didn't look at Oklahoma State's points off turnovers against them. All right. But turnover margin right now, it's not one of the best stats at all, but it is the 10th most important stat out of all 21 that I look at. So it does make top 10. So if our defense can force 2 turnovers, we will win, because our offense will be able to convert those turnovers into points, and that is just a swing of 7, 14 points, whatever, however you want to look at it. Those are points that go on our side of the scoreboard, not theirs. So good for us. We are also a much better passing football team than Oklahoma State. We have 25 on the season. They have 19. Even without Kyron Williams catching and scoring some of those, it doesn't matter. Notre Dame's right now offensive strength, with Kyron Williams not there, is passing the football. I know that's kind of goes against everything I say here on this podcast of hashtag RTDB and all of that, but I'm willing to put my pride aside, put my preference aside. I would love us to, power run, get in an I formation, run counters and sweeps and shit like that. Just run between the tackles and just Mack truck some people. And if we do that, hell, I'll be, really happy on New Year's Day. But I'm also brave enough and focused enough on winning and saying, this is what's before us. This is what we have in the cupboard. What kind of a casserole can we make here? And it's a passing casserole. It's not a rushing the football casserole. Can we do it? Yes, but that is the strength of their defense, is rushing defense. Passing defense, yeah, it's pretty good, and it's ranked 12th in the country versus ours, which is 40th. Okay, but you compare just passing versus rushing, their passing defense is the weaker of the two, so you must exploit that. So we are a better offense. Our passing is better. Now, I'm not saying we need to pass the ball 70% of the time in this game, because I really think if we're doing that, we're looking for trouble, okay? So I don't think that we should do that. But let's go to the stat I always talk about. You all know what that is. It's yards per point. Oklahoma State, 13.13 yards per point on the season. Notre Dame, 11.79 yards per point. That makes me happy, Fighting Irish faithful. Seeing Notre Dame with a better yards per point average on the season than Oklahoma State really gets me feeling good, feeling positive. The things I talk about all the time, yards per point, how well you're doing in these numbers. Okay, if I just look at some of these numbers and take Kyron Williams out, I get really depressed and I want to finish this scotch here. Okay, but if I look at the most important stat that time and time again has not failed me, it is yards per point, and we are much better than them. So we have an opportunity here. We can right a lot of wrongs, kind of forget the past, and move into a new era that is Notre Dame football with Coach Freeman. The toast tonight is not to be going to Coach Freeman, but it's going to be to Tommy Rees. Tommy Rees, you've had over a month to prepare. You are clearly a Notre Dame guy. You are from the Midwest, from the Chicago area. You want to win a championship at Notre Dame. This is an important step for you to be your one true self. Use our players how you see fit. If that is passing, good. If that is rushing, good. I'll love it even more. But you are the toast because I have 100% confidence in you. I have to throw my confidence behind you in this game. The game will go down to two things. Turnovers, I've already mentioned. We must win the turnover battle. But whichever team scores 30 or more points first will win. In the losses that Oklahoma State has, there's two on the season. Iowa State and Baylor, they scored 21 and 16 points respectively. Against the other teams that had really good offenses, i.e. Oklahoma and Texas, they scored no more than 37 points. Okay, and those defenses, Oklahoma and Texas, were significantly worse than Notre Dame's. Go and look at the numbers yourself. I really believe that Rees, with a better offense, can put up more points, and a defense that's better than any defense that Oklahoma State has played all season, we will be victorious. The Fighting Irish, under Marcus Freeman and our offensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, we will do better. We have better players. We just have an energy that these guys want to victory. There's nothing else to say. We need to come out and win this game. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm really excited for the bowl game. Have a good, happy, safe Christmas coming up here. We will do a podcast next week. We'll see if we can get some more people on Twitter Spaces. I'll give some shout outs to some of the people next week. I really don't have a whole lot planned next week for the podcast, but I still want to do them, and I kind of want to make it more interactive. If we can somehow get some Twitter Space going and get a conversation going amongst ourselves, I would be okay with that. So that would be Catholics versus Cowboys, part 3. But it'll be like we're virtually meeting at a bar, eating hot wings and drinking beer and whatnot. And we'll be the loud table at the bar here, which is totally fine, but we're a friendly group. Thank you, everyone, for joining me for the podcast tonight. Have a great Christmas. Merry Christmas, but happy Advent first. Go Irish and beat Cowboys.